Round 3 is technology, and first up we have Laura.
So, science fiction. Extraterrestrial life is a familiar topic in fiction and is one of the core subjects in science fiction, surprisingly enough. The term flying saucer was coined in 1947, and several science fiction novels have used it. What is possibly less known is what the probable influence on technology the idea of extraterrestrial life has had from science fiction. So in 1951, the first erectile
Sorry, did you say the first erectile? The first erectile transport.
Does someone else want to read my fact for me?
Yeah, let's have a look.
No, because it's not actually written out properly. The first erectile transcontinental...
Oh, direct dial.
Oh, you definitely said erectile.
You definitely, yes. Yeah. So I saw the look on Chris's face as soon as you said that.
It's like, I've got jokes.
I've got penises on the brain.
So that's CCD.
Right. So the direct dial function that you need to tell us about. Please continue.
So there's a timeline of probable influences of technology from extraterrestrial life in science fiction. In 1951, there was the first direct dial transcontinental telephone call. In 1951 also, the largest television broadcast was made by President Harry Truman to around 30 million people whilst he made a speech. In 1954, the solar cell was invented, first solar battery, and in 1956, first transoceanic telephone cables were formed. In 1958, the laser was invented. All of these are key in a lot of extraterrestrial science fiction plots that have been used since the early 18th century.
Cool.
Well
So
done.
we made shit up from science fiction.
Yes.
Awesome. They do that a lot these days as well, don't they?
I tried my best not to go with my original ones about how so many things have come from Star Trek in terms of Motorola being influenced by it, the sliding doors being influenced by it, medical innovations such as non-invasive procedures, so not x-rays but things like MRI scans, CAT scans, etc. All of those were developed further from Star Trek, thinking, okay, well that would be a great way to go about things if we could minimise sort of going in and doing any sort of damage before we have to. So all of those sorts of things were started from a science fiction idea and then moving into science fact. Motorola,
The Razor flip phone.
Razor flip phone, tablets.
Oh, the whole touchscreen.
Touchscreen tablets and all the rest of it.
Pill tablets.
Not pill tablets, but the touchscreen tablets, iPads, etc.
Sorry to interrupt.
Other
There's
brands
actually a
are
scene in the
available.
Next Generation where Data is actually unpacking a load of devices, and he's talking about how he wanted them rather than they needed them, and they just look like he's unpacking iPads.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and then he complains about having to set them up because it takes for fucking ever. Oh. Cool.
Another thing that's come into existence thanks to Star Trek is a functioning tractor beam. Yes, it's on a much smaller scale.
It's literally a tractor.
Do you want me to bottle you or throw
No,
one
I can
over
have
you?
more try.
Are you aiming for this to happen?
No,
There's
the beam
keys on
fits
the
on the
table, I
tow
could
bar.
key you.
I'm not a car.
However,
You-
teleportation
you
will
slot-
never happen because teleportation cannot exist in our universe. Apparently.
They have teleported things. They teleported a molecule.
A molecule, yes, I could believe that, but when you say it, if you try to expand that to a human,
Oh, yeah.
you are basically disassembling and
Essentially, what we really
destroying
want is
and
the system
creating.
from Borderlands 2. Well, not Borderlands even, where you just get reconstructed whenever you die.
Indeed.
Would it be a bit
Just
similar to the Prestige film with Christian Bale
Exactly
and Hugh Jackman?
You
In the terms
spoilers.
in the terms that it's made to look through the film that he is teleporting himself, but really he's just cloning himself, kind of, and sending him.
No, it is exactly that. He is creating a clone of himself, and he realizes that the original must die, and it is that's exactly what teleportation would do. You are disassembled, your molecules are completely destroyed at one place and then reconstructed instantaneously in another location, but travelling at the speed of light, which means you were reduced to no mass and then created again out of different mass. So you are no longer the same stardust that you were when you were
Once
born
you
from
were.
the stars. So that's the idea that teleportation in this universe is theoretically not possible based on the standard model of physics, because it is not the same person. It is essentially beaming your
Creating a new person that is the same.
yes. And if you could
Anyway, yeah, cool. So next up we have Chris H.
Chris H. In the Star Wars movies, the Imperial TIE fighters are propelled by ion propulsion engines. TIE stands for Twin Ion Engine. This type of propulsion already exists today. It's a sort of electric plasma rocket thing. I don't think it's powerful enough to break the pull of the Earth's atmosphere, but it seems very efficient in space from what I've read.
I can chip in a bit on the reasons for that.
Yes, please do.
So briefly on that to encompass. So to break the Earth's gravity, you need, I can't remember the exact, but a X amount of pounds of thrust per pound of weight you want to lift into the atmosphere because of the effect of gravity. Ion engines cannot produce pounds of thrust in that. They produce a very minimal thrust extremely efficiently. So the idea is a twin system. You have solid fuel rocket boosters to escape the Earth or whatever planet you're launching from's gravitational pull and field, and once you are then already at a velocity of 22,000 miles per second, you turn on the ion engines, which then increase that 22,000 1, 2, 3, increasing at a speed of maybe, I think, 1 mile a second every 10 hours, I think it is currently, and their projections. But the point of that is for a space probe, that means after a year, it's picked up speed to be way beyond what we could have done, even if we'd given it a rocket boost to the size of Texas.
Talk there was it Deep Space doing 4,500 miles per second, and that was a slow one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting, and the sort of the powers they're creating in kilowatts seem comparable to Ford Focus.
Exactly, that's the beauty of the ion engine, because it's extremely cheap and efficient to run. It is perfect for this sort of deep space increasing propulsion, because the whole point of travelling in space that people miss out, and you can always call this on, well, you can mostly call it on most science fiction, you'll see fighters, TIE fighters and things in in space, continuously firing their rockets and boosters, which would be continuously accelerating them in one direction, which, because there's no friction, means that they then have to turn around and completely come to a stop and then accelerate away from there, because there's no such thing as drag or wind resistance or anything in space. There's nothing to stop them. So when you say people saying we're at max speed in their fighter, they're not. They're constantly getting faster. Max speed doesn't exist apart from the speed of light.
Yeah. Well, I bet they don't make the signature shrieking noise that a TIE fighter makes as it roars past as well.
No.
Sort of, yeah.
Is it more like a
Because
cat
in space, no. Space no one can hear you
is
scream.
very similar to the sound that a dwarf whale makes.
A dwarf what?
Whale.
That noise is actually a mixture of an elephant and another animal, I think potentially a whale, plus some distortion effects. That's how a TIE fighter sound is made. Please fact check that. I'm not sure.
Just as a kid, I assumed they were called TIE fighters because they're shaped, they're a bit like a bow tie. That's what
I think that would be that's the pun. Maybe George Lucas did that and then think, oh, what can I do? Twin, that's a good start. Ion engine, done. Fantastic. But yeah, no, that's good. I like that one.
Nice. Love a bit of Star Wars. Always love a bit of Star Wars. And okay, next up we have Chris S.
Thanks. Okay, so for technology, I'm going to go into a science fiction concept that could one day become science fact, in terms of the, as we know it, most powerful form of energy generation that we can come up with.
So are you talking about the possibility of nuclear fusion in the future?
Well, I'm exactly talking about fusion, but not nuclear fusion on
Cold
Earth
fusion?
as we're talking about it, and not cold fusion. That's a debunked fact put forward by two scientists that said they could do it at room temperature, and it's complete bollocks. You couldn't smash the atoms together. The electromagnetic repulsion field that's created from the electrons around it would not allow that to happen. Sorry.
Cool, I just remember this from old films. I realised that no one's really mentioned it in a while, so I assumed it was rather
Indeed. Well,
science.
but then there's an
fiction
interest.
more than science fact.
Indeed. So fusion power, exactly that. But the biggest fusion reactor that we have is the sun. The biggest fusion reactor we know about is the sun. Obviously, there are bigger stars out there, but this is our one.
Yeah.
We're closer to it. So I want to talk about something called a Dyson sphere. If you have ever heard about a Dyson sphere, it is a energy generation device, first put forward through a thought experiment. I'll talk about the concept first. It is the idea of harnessing the entire energy output of your home solar system's star via some means. They didn't go into how you would do it, just what the concept of it is. The concept of harnessing that is what we would deem a type 2 civilization on the Kardashev scale of scientific generations of planets. Type 1 being full control of the planet's energy. Type 2, full control of the sun and solar system's energy. The Dyson sphere is an implementation of harnessing the full power of a star. The idea being that you would encase the star in this Dyson sphere megastructure, and that would be able to therefore catch all of the sun's emitted radiation in the form of light, heat, electromagnetic rays, the bursts that come off, I do forget them, the coronal ejections. All of these would be able to be captured and harnessed to channel into things like faster than light travel, space elevators, cross solar systems spanning galactic bridges, all the ideas that we've thought about that require stupid amounts of energy.
Death Stars.
Indeed. To give you an example of what we're talking about in terms of how much power a Dyson sphere could do, if we all know that the Earth is insignificant in size in comparison to the star.
I thought you were going to say the power of the Force then.
No.
Sorry. Please go on.
So the Earth is absolutely tiny. I haven't checked how small it is, but you could fit the Earth, I think, 1 million times, something stupid, into the size of the Sun. Now, the amount of energy that falls on the Earth in a single 24-hour period from the Sun is more energy than the human race has ever produced on the planet. And we're talking about harnessing all the energy that that star produces, including the stuff that doesn't land on our planet, which is the 999,999, all the radius around that sort of energy. That's factors beyond we've even thought about creating mathematics for. I mean, scientific notation would probably be inadequate for listing the levels of the amount of energy it would produce is just unreal. A star produces so much energy, and if we could harness all of that, world peace, no hunger, anything would be possible. Everything would be as cheap as anything.
But that's a very human kind of attitude of actually fuck everyone else.
Exactly. And there's, to go slightly further on this, SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, has been looking for 70 years or thereabouts for signs of extraterrestrial life. If the Dyson sphere is, through this thought experiment, the achievable, the way of doing interstellar travel, because it is the best power source out there, and naturally you would get to going to needing that. The whole point of where this came from, they said, well, human race currently, our energy consumption is increasing dramatically every year. Eventually we will need all the energy of the sun. So how would we do it? That was the thought experiment. If this is the case, why do we not see giant holes in the galaxy? Or in any of the galaxies that we observe, where there should be stars, there are noticeable gaps, but the gravity is still present.
I read the other day about it, actually. They think they found another Dyson sphere, don't they? They found a star with a light that it dips too much to be a planet passing.
They think that there's a megastructure of some sort on the way, so they don't know if it's a full Dyson sphere, if it's the first sort of infrastructure going around, say a belt to begin it, because there's many different ways people have thought of making a Dyson sphere, and it's not strictly always a sphere. This is just the term given to any sort of machine or megastructure or way of harnessing the full power of a star. Sorry.
Yes, but they're talking about being a protoplasmic disk as well. So if we're seeing it side on, it could block the light as well. But if they're building it as a belt, it would have the same effect as a star forming, basically.
Interesting. Yeah, no. I mean, they're constantly looking for signs, and we've only been looking for 70 years, so we might very well say, hey, that galaxy is missing half its bright quadrant.
Yeah, and of course, depending on when it's been done, if you assume it's a civilization that's the same stage as ours, if they're doing it now, we're not going to see it.
Well, precisely, but to point out that our civilization is pretty millennia away from that.
Awesome. Great fact. Alright, so for round 3, technology, are we going to go with Laura's earth-shattering facts, Chris H's bow tie fighters, or Chris S's solar power plus? Chris.
I'm going to go with the Dyson sphere just because I think it's a fascinating concept, and I read about it the other day too. So,
Other Chris.
I'm going to go with the bow tie fighters.
Cool. Laura.
I'm going to go with Christopher's fact as well.
i.e. the solar power.
Yes, please.
Cool. I am also going to go with solar power just because it's an awesome fact. Well done, Chris. You won round 3.